this next section is going to be how we would share this material. We don't always, certain times we would, if we're just sitting with a couple, we might just walk through it, but typically we will use all these resources because I'm going to stop talking because I want to include this, everything else I'm going to say on the long-term video. So hang on. So the content for today is going to be this idea of how you help people build this skill, especially when they're maybe not ever had a practice of meaningful connection. How do you build the skill of meeting emotion with emotion and creating that power and the energy and the sense of being known and cared for that flows from the idea of empathetic presence and Jesus being with us, just being present, being emotionally present. The idea of empathy that's present in our day is the current word that is used for that. And sometimes if you go out and float around and do some searches, somebody will really condemn the idea of being empathetic. And the ones I've seen, the examples of Orthodox believers who would condemn empathy are some of the ones that would also condemn the idea of accepting someone. And remember, the difference is not that we're validating the action or some sinful behavior or that any choice has equal value. Being empathetic does not require you to do that. Being empathetic just means we come alongside, whether it's feeling really happy about something or sad about something. And there are some things that are rooted in sin that it can be a real challenge to be empathetic. But most of the time, it's the choice to do it that's important. When we think about being empathetically present and what it accomplishes, it really is this deeply spiritual thing that occurs when human beings meet each other in a place of emotion. And that can be positive emotion or negative emotion. And so when we start out on this, we're laying out this call that this is the thing. When we can feel connected, we can experience this sense of connection, that will give us power to keep going. When we feel isolated, when we feel disconnected, then taking emotional risk, expressing vulnerability, there's just an increase in fear, an increase in anxiety that'll flow from that. So we want to do a really, really good job of this because this is the tool. And I would say, as you're teaching this, I would not be at all bothered by somebody saying this is the most important relational tool. Even though at the same time I would say, well, maybe confession and forgiveness is the most important result. To do emotion or reconciliation, confession and forgiveness, that whole world well, you have to do empathy well to really get to this place of feeling and experience reconciliation. So we're gonna jump into it, and this is how I do this.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so when we think about this idea of meeting emotion with emotion, did you catch the 4 kind of big ideas that flowed out of the list that came out of that video? Anybody holler those out?
Perspective taking.
Yep. Good job.
Connection. Go ahead.
Staying out of judgment.
Yep. There you go. You guys are listening. You're even doing it in order, man. Any more? That's okay if you didn't. Some ways I wouldn't expect you to catch them all.
It dealt with connection, like making a connection.
Yep.
There's like making and staying in connection. So
yeah, there's kind of 2 big things that happen. The ability to empathize means we recognize emotion in someone else. So we take time to not only hear words and be in this cognitive data kind of way of thinking, but we're also listening and watching for people's countenance and the joy or sadness in their eyes, et cetera. And the idea of communicating that emotion is when we actually make the connection. So if we go there but we never say anything, or we never acknowledge, sometimes that might be with a hug or just sitting quietly if we're present, but oftentimes our words are going to be the simple process, and this is the pieces we want people to keep working for as they're listening to story, as they're practicing telling story. Then we want them to try to take the perspective of that person, and we'll walk over some of those details as we go through. But that's the big idea there. And I'm going to show another video here, and these probably, depending on where you are, et cetera, I can't really translate or share this PowerPoint with the videos in play. But if you were to go out and find them, I may just put these videos on my YouTube channel and invite everybody to download them. I never run them over the internet when I'm doing a conference, because there's just too many bad things that can happen. So I always want to have it on a local hosted video when I'm showing this or teaching this at a conference or a retreat or whatever. So just a hint there. I wouldn't trust the internet wherever you are. If at all possible, get it downloaded. If you like these, if you find other ones, by the way, if you find other good examples of videos or illustrations, please do. Yeah, and I saw Tom asked, is that Brene Brown? Yeah, that's Brene Brown. This is obviously, she has some more famous ones, but it really is a great picture of what it means to meet that emotion. But what you notice there, again, even when she's sharing that, it's mostly dealing with the idea of negative emotion. You know, empathy is someone's in a dark place. Well, what if they're in a really happy place? Well, then we can be empathetic there too. So that's where the Romans 12:15 becomes a better example. I'm going to show this other video clip quickly and
Oh, the stuffed animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! wait! Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's your friend who likes to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the top. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on, the train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey, there's the train.
Okay, so the reason I like that video, and if you find another one or another way to teach this, I think it's a great picture of how people are tempted to respond when someone is sad, cheering them up, encouraging them, talking them out of their pain, sometimes saying it's not that bad, kind of staying out of that whole judgment. That shouldn't hurt. As believers, I think we're especially adept at saying, well, if you hadn't sinned, it wouldn't hurt so much. And so I think that capacity to actually meet people and connect before we bring a chastisement or an encouragement or a reminder or whatever it is, to be able to just sit in that challenge. And so the big idea of this exercise is to simply rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That's the big idea. Learning how to stay in step with where people are, especially our mate, this rhythm of life. And all of these skill exercises, again, the three primary key ones are meeting emotion with emotion, how to engage your heart, assertiveness, and then confession and forgiveness or reconciliation exercise. Those are the three core things. They all require we need to engage that care muscle if they're going to be effective, if they're going to be different than just exchanging words. And so this idea of being able to step into and shepherd our hearts to a place of being okay with moving to a place of someone else's pain, it definitely is a skill. By the way, with empathy, this is my understanding. I don't know if anybody can prove this. I would say anecdotally and observationally, it would be very clear. Human beings are born with this incredible capacity for empathy, to care about. If you watch little kids, when they see another little, even a baby, a small child, toddler that's distressed, and they'll instantly pay attention. They're very quick. Small children, babies are very quick to engage and lock eyes and make this relational connection. The whole idea of kissing boo-boos is an example of weeping with those who weep. There is no medicinal value in kissing a boo-boo. It's, I see your pain, I care about your pain, and typically that will allow a young child to have courage to go back. Obviously, if it's a serious injury, that kissing the boo-boo doesn't do it, but a little scrape, a little bump, something that's a little distressing, just a parent or a friend or a sibling pulling them close and say, I saw that, I care about that. usually moves them along and gets them back through it. And so the whole picture of rejoicing with those who rejoice, weeping with those who weep, is creating that connection so that we don't interpret things badly. And it really is therapeutic. It is very, very connecting. And it is a critical piece. And we can talk more maybe during the Q&A, some of the other reasons that's important. But for right now, this is all you're going to do. There's a few keys that I think are pretty significant. I talked about gazing, and I didn't really describe that. What we've seen as I've watched videos of people gazing, the idea of standing up is important. In the rest of these exercises, I don't know it's as important, but body posture is important, how well these things work. So here's some keys. When you're getting ready, and even as you model this, I would every single time say this phrase. This is our covenant that we are promising to bring care to one another. And if you ask for care, I'm going to do my very, very best to step into that and care for you and meet that care. It's kind of that's our fulfillment of the Genesis mandate. And if you've got the folders, it's the last page of that. That's what we're going for. That's what we're hoping that every married couple will engage with, is that I see my role, unique role in history, as the primary caregiver to one other person that I'm married to for life. Now, we also have covenants and commitments. We'd love to see people to make it in small groups or in church membership, or church engagement, or even short term with mission teams that we agree we're going to be in this posture of caring. But the marriage covenant is unique, and that's where the Genesis mandate comes in. And this is the reminder. This is when we walk through the Genesis mandate, make that promise to each other to be that resource, to be that engaged. When we say, is this a good time to share my heart with you? That's kind of, it gives the Spirit something to respond to draw us out of. So we could be tired, we could be busy, we could just want to just veg. Oh no, I promise to care for you. But the other thing this phrase does is it keeps us from hurting each other by not hearing the request. So when we agree as couples, when I say this, that means I'm asking for a connection time. Oh, okay. That's different than, hey, you want to watch some TV later? That's a different phrase. Or you want to pick up a quart of milk on the way home? That's a different thing. This is saying this is sacred relationship space. And so that even to this day, Cindy and I occasionally will, one or the other of us will want to make a connection. We don't use this phrase and walk through the room and go, yeah, they don't care. And it's just that little sting of missing a connection point, and then usually we'll go, wait a minute, we didn't call them into relationship, so I can't really blame her for not being engaged if I didn't request it and make sure she knew what I was saying. She can't read my mind. So that's a really important phrase, and an important phrase to practice even as you walk through this. So heading into this exercise, if you're doing an all-day retreat and you're just going to do mostly the skills, or a weekend retreat, trying to have at least 2 happy stories and 2 sad or unpleasant memories for each member to share. So 4 stories total from each person. So 8 total. So that's a fair amount of talking. And it'll take a little while. You can't do this quick. Typically, we budget 30 to 40 minutes in our all-day retreats when we're in complete control, and really try to give people a chance to connect and care and hear each other's stories. And we encourage 3 of each of those stories. And even with 45 minutes, sometimes they don't get all the way through them. In the resource, as you'll see, I'm going to see if I can find one quick. Yep, got one right here. There's the opposite page. If you're looking at the book, or the page numbers show up, however you print it, on page 6 is the script that we have people walk through. And on page 7 is this list of examples. The reason we want to have examples and we want to do it from childhood, a couple different reasons. Number one is it's safer. It can't be my fault. If you got hurt when you were 8, it cannot be my fault. And so couples that don't have great dynamics, they don't fall back into their loops too easily. It's easier to care. The second piece of that is to be known, to hear more story, to understand what has shaped your mate. So hearing some of those stories that are either happy or sad does that. The third one is it's therapeutic. Sometimes we just had an experience this last week. I don't know how many people have heard her story, but and maybe the husband had heard her story previously, but he was deeply impacted by hearing her story and being able to care for her and grieve with some of the trauma that she'd experienced. And so it really is therapeutic to get those out in the light and to share them together. And that alone brings us to a place of connection. So that's an important piece of it. For age 12, keeps it away from contemporary stories. If you ever watch Cindy and I model, most of ours now are contemporary because we've worked through most of our childhood stories after 10 or 15 years of doing this. But occasionally we'll still find a fun story to share from childhood that's pretty sweet, and we enjoy it when the Lord allows those to be brought together. So the physical posture is important. I was just talking to Tom earlier today, and he mentioned the process of knee to knee kind of stuff. That's really what you want to create here. Is this leaning in, this we're engaged here. We're not kind of slouching away or arms crossed, but we're really trying to engage. And if you can hold hands, if they can hold hands, that's positive. There's a great chemical that's released that leads to a sense of connection when lovers touch. And so that's a huge piece of how to help people stay engaged, lean in, and listen well. The posture of looking into their eyes again. The eyes are the window of the soul somehow. The one cheat that we help people with, because sometimes it can be a little weird, especially if they're not in the habit of looking at each other's eyes. We just encourage them to focus on one eye, because the person that you're looking at can't tell which eye you're looking at, but it takes away that weird twitchy, which way am I looking? What am I looking at? What am I focusing on? And so it just gives you a way to be present and not feel weird about staring into somebody's eyes. If either spouse is having trouble making connection with the story being told, can be lots of reasons for that. They can be emotionally shut down. Their empathetic muscle can be kind of constricted or atrophied. Sometimes it's harder. I think it's not universally true. I'd say it's just more common for men it's hard for them to imagine their wives as young girls and how life would have been so impactful and big when they walked through things as a little girl. And so a simple thing to say is, tell me more how that made you feel, and let them keep talking about how it made them feel. The other thing that can be helpful to, so if the goal is to meet emotion with emotion and we want to connect with something in us, well then whatever we use in our mind to say, ooh, as an example, you may have or know an aunt or a niece or a nephew or a child that's about that age, and you go, wow, I could really see that being painful if that happened to them. So you can call to mind those kind of things. But as you're doing that, as you're trying to move to this place where you're ready to speak or to feel with them, the one really big no-no is don't tell your story. So if it helps you in your mind to remember a time where something similar happened and that moves your emotion, that's great. The second you start talking about it or sharing your story or saying something like, yeah, I know exactly how that feels, that happened to me too, then it's no longer an empathetic response. Okay, so stay out of that place. Now that may remind you to share that story later, which is perfectly appropriate. But what you don't want to do is take away from their opportunity to be cared for and your opportunity to keep moving towards them and be empathetic towards them. You want to make a little note and say, ooh, I need to tell my wife or husband that story. That's great. But just don't do it in this moment. So the script is really, really simple. It always starts with, and you will occasionally get pushback. This is cheesy. Well, maybe, I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. It doesn't feel cheesy to me. But I could see where if it was unfamiliar or scary, I might want to find some reason why I didn't want to use it. I might call it cheesy. The important thing is, are we being sincere? Are we being real? Are we being authentic? and God will use it if we do that. So here's the steps. Rejoicing with those who rejoice. We typically encourage couples to start with a happy story. And by the way, if you've seen Inside Out, you see the main point of things, that all memories are kind of mixed. There's happy and sad stories. But sharing with your partner this story. I'm going to back up to the stories they pick. This is important for you to wrestle with and come to some conviction on. This is what I understand from a memory emotion matrix that exists inside every human. If there is not an emotion attached to a memory, that memory will probably go off the cliff pretty quickly. Okay, we don't tend to hang on to things unless there's an emotion. That may not be this super intense emotion, but it's probably strong enough that it kind of settles in and goes, ooh, I remember that. And it can be just a sense of safety or security or feeling loved or feeling warm. So it doesn't have to be super intense, but there's usually an emotion. So if you remember it, and you can encourage people that you're trying to help, I don't remember any sad things. Well, what happened in your life? What do you remember about your life? Well, I fell off my bike. Okay, well, there's a good chance there's an emotion associated with that. And so encourage people in that. And that's what they're looking for, is they're trying to find story to share with one another, is those places. And then identify what happened and how did it make me feel. That's the idea of creating the sharing piece. What happened in the memory in my life, and how did it make me feel? Okay. So, and then the speaker shares, as I reflect, or as I remember my growing up years, I remember a time when I won the class spelling bee, and I got this huge trophy, and everybody was excited, and I just felt awesome. It was so fun to be celebrated like that. And you share that story, and that's about all you need to do. That's about as deep as it needs to go. Now, if I'm just learning how to meet emotion with emotion, then I may need some more time to go, okay, tell me some more. Tell me some more. Yeah, do you remember who you beat, or how hard did you work? Tell me about that. It just so to try to engage more with that sense of celebration. Okay. Same thing goes with the morning. Basically, all you have to do is rejoice, and you don't get extra points for being verbose as the responder. It's just like, I am so glad that happened. I am super excited you got to have that experience. I wish I could have seen that. That would be so fun to see you so excited as a little girl, as a little boy. And that's it. Then you kiss and move on. And you have those hard stops. Okay. The morning, same thing. There's no bonus points for trying to say more and more words. It's the most important job of the listener is to shepherd your heart to that place where you're connecting with that same emotion. You're striving for that understanding of how they're feeling, and let your heart join them there. Let them go there, and then to speak it. I am so sorry that happened to you. That breaks my heart that would ever happen to you. I'm so sad. And that's it. If you mean it, if that's what you're feeling, it will typically land. If it doesn't land, then there may be other things going on that we can talk about on another training. But that's typically what would happen. And you need to leave enough time that they can kind of go through this rhythm a few times and not rush it. Don't rush this. Don't rush the practice. Don't rush the practice. You don't have to tell them all the details, but don't rush the practice. Give them a chance to just be cared for, because there's so little opportunity in our modern world to create that where somebody can just experience being celebrated or grieved with. So those are the big ideas. And as you think about how to do this, we are typically then, before we would release them, Cindy and I will model this. I'm not going to do that today. You'll be able to find some modeling videos on all the primary skill sets here, hopefully within a week or two. We're saving up source material right now to make sure we can get enough videos and cameras and stuff, so that those aren't quite as lame with two people in the frame. So hopefully within a week or so, we will have those modeling videos for you to watch. and see how that rolls out. But we won't do that during the class, the modeling piece. So do a good job of knowing why, and then setting them up for success with those some of those helpful hints. And typically what we would encourage is walk around, watch body language, let people know if they need help. You're happy to sit down with them. Again, I'm thinking in the context of a retreat or a conference or something like that. If you're doing it in your living room, that's what we do in our home. We might have 3 couples at a time come and stay with us, and we'll walk them through this material. If it's just one, we often just have them show us once how they do with it, and then release them to go and practice on their own. So it's a little more private, a little more intimate for them. And then we hang around and say, if you need us, we're right here. We'll step back in and give you a hand if you get stuck. So it's a little different than just handing people an idea or script, because you're actually want to be a part of shepherding the connection piece, and not let them settle for saying words back and forth, but really fight for that connection. And that's really what I believe is the power of all the other tools, is rooted in our capacity to be emotionally present.